Game 3 of the NBA Finals is tonight. What are the adjustments that each team has to make? And is Jayson Tatum a superstar? We'll talk about it right now on the Locked On NBA podcast.
You are Locked On NBA, your daily NBA podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hey there, welcome back to the Locked On NBA podcast. The podcast covering the entire league, Monday through Friday. I almost forgot how to intro this show because I've been running around covering the NBA Finals, but this is what we're going to do on this show as well, covering the NBA Finals. Locked On NBA, like every other Locked On podcast, is free. It's available daily. It'll be there for you in the morning when you get ready to go to work or whatever it is that you're doing. And it's on YouTube. You can watch the show on YouTube. Watch us. On Wednesdays, I'm one of your regular co-hosts, John Karalis, at John_Karalis on Twitter, and I cover the Celtics on the Locked On Celtics podcast.
And I'm Jake Madison, host of the Locked On Pelicans podcast. You can find me on Twitter at Noel@Jake. You jet lagged flying back?
I am not all mentally there.
No, could not tell at all from the open of the show that we do every week.
The fog that exists in San Francisco has permeated my skull and is residing in my brain. Yeah, it's going back and forth has been interesting. And air travel in general, anybody who's flown understands that it's harder now. Flights are scarcer. There are more problems. So that is not unique to NBA travel, but it's been a wild ride, let's say. But I'm here. I'm ready. I feel good. This is a normal time to be podcasting. I am mostly awake, and hopefully the Celtics and Warriors are mostly awake for their game tonight.
Hey, look, it's 1-1. I'm excited. 2 days off between finals games almost feels like forever. Like it's been weeks since game 2. So I'm excited we get to preview game 3 and talk about adjustments and things like that on what should hopefully be a good game.
Yeah, this is gonna be a fun one. Now, I guess the first question here, and I'll throw it out to you. The Celtics MO all playoffs long has generally been win one, lose one, win one, lose one. Except for when they went down 3-2 to the Bucks, they won 2 in a row. But they kind of have been alternating wins. So do you anticipate that they continue alternating wins? Or what do you expect to be the storyline here for the game 3?
It's a good question, right? I think are they undefeated almost after losses in this postseason so far, or they have an exceptional record after they lose a game, right?
They have not lost the way the stat is phrased, because they lost 2 in a row at the end of the season when they sat everybody against Toronto. So that was a consecutive loss. So what they're saying is they haven't lost consecutive meaningful games where have actually played their starters back since January. So they haven't lost 2 in a row, like real games in a row. Since I forget what the date is, but it's like January.
It's still impressive, right? Like that's still an incredible streak. Yeah. And but the other thing is though, they're not great at home in the postseason, or at least this postseason so far. So you kind of have these two almost opposite things kind of going at each other, which means I have no idea what we're going to see from them. And it honestly might come down to like adjustments and things like that. And I think early on you might be able to see if the Celtics are going to be in this one in a way that you probably hope they do, compared to what we saw in, say, like game 2 and things like that.
Yeah, I would say that for the Celtics, the story for the Celtics is simple. And I say this with apologies to the Locked On Heat folks. I heard David Ramil on Locked On NBA yesterday talk about this. I know this pisses off the Heat fans, and I know this bothers other fan bases, because when the Celtics do stuff wrong, the outwardly it has been said, well, it's Boston's fault, and the credit is taken away from the team that they're playing against for causing those turnovers. Especially it's the Celtics. It's very simple. They Ime Udoka put the stat out there today. They're 0-5, I think, when they turn the ball over 15 times or more, and they are something like 15-2 when it's less than that. So the the other team deserves some credit, right? You steal the ball, you deserve credit. But when I'm watching the game and I'm rewatching the film, for Boston, there are certainly turnovers that the other team forces. But just for the sake of clarification, when the Celtics turn the ball over 20 times, there is a large percentage of that is preventable. And that's when I talk about the Celtics just coughed it up. That's what I'm talking about. If they turn it over 20 times and there's like 6 steals from the Warriors, great, good job, good defense. But then, honestly, Jake, there's like a dozen turnovers where you look at Boston and you say, well, why did you dribble so deep without a plan? You like Jaylen Brown does that a lot.
Yeah.
You dribble, over penetrate, you get into the restricted area. Now you're like, oh crap. And they make these mistakes where they're
unforced errors, right? Like that's kind of what it is to a certain extent.
You get to a point where you should do something else, and then they go 2 steps further than that, and they get stuck and they turn the ball over.
So I agree with that to an extent. Like having watched them and seeing some of that and looking at some of those turnovers in game 2. And look, the biggest story of adjustments and things like that, I think, is turnovers. First and foremost, right? Like that's kind of the theme of the wins and losses for the Boston Celtics this postseason, particularly that Miami series too. So a lot of those were definitely them just kind of not boneheaded plays, but it's kind of like you said, like what are you doing there? There were like 2 where they just stepped out of bounds, and it's like you can avoid that. Those are things that can be fixed and corrected. But I think a lot of the things, particularly the one about like Jaylen Brown that you just mentioned, was also due to the defensive adjustments by the Warriors, right? Like they're playing further up on a lot of those, a lot of the Boston role players. And it's not so much that they were forcing steals by getting their arms in the passing lanes, right? Or blocking a shot or doing all of those things. It was kind of that defensive pressure seemed to make them feel uncomfortable and let them into those sort of mistakes. Getting Draymond Green on Jaylen Brown with his at times kind of unreliable handle instead of having Green on Al Horford, I think was really big. And having Klay Thompson on Horford and doing a good enough job on Horford that he got nothing going in that game was massive. And so when I look at some of those turnovers, I think it's due almost to an extent by the Warriors and their game plan, even if the Warriors aren't like directly forcing some of that. Does that make sense?
I know what you're saying, and it does make sense. So when you see things like the stuff that you mentioned, 100%, those are plays that the Warriors are making and playing great defense. But I'm looking at this, and now obviously I look at things entirely almost from the Celtics. But when I see, I look, I know I'm the Celtics guy, but I do.
You're objective with it. Like I'm going to give you that.
Like when
you're not here being like a fan homer guy.
I will tell you that they're bad, and so the stuff that you're talking about, 100%, absolutely. But here's the thing: when the Celtics, there's one play in particular that I'm talking about, where like Jaylen Brown has Gary Payton on his left side. He does not have him on his hip. So when you're driving and you have the guy on your hip, you know that you could take a little step to your left if you're driving right and he's on your left side, a little step to your left, and now you jump and he's on your hip, he's going to foul you. You get that contact, you go up, you get that layup. That's driving with a plan. I got him here. I know if I just cut him off, I have that angle to cut him off. It's an and one opportunity. But Peyton is now not on his hip. In reality, he's more to his side. So Jaylen has to make a decision. At that point, it's because you're the offensive player and you know when you're going to stop, and the defensive player doesn't, he's always going to take an extra step. So when you have him on your side, drive hard, stop, step back jumper, mid-range shot, Jaylen Brown, bread and butter. That's a great shot for him. Take that shot. That's what Ime says. Take that shot. That's the adjustment. Now, if you take and make that shot, now he has to hug up on you a little bit more. They have to adjust to you. Or stop, pop, fake, draw the defense. Now you throw the pass to Al Horford rather than get into that oh crap moment and you turn and you fire a fastball to a guy 3 feet away. Those are the preventable types of turnovers that the Celtics really constantly over penetrating. That's why I just said the Celtics get to a point where they're at a point on the floor like, boom, this is where you stop and you make the pass or take the shot. The Celtics, when they're at their worst, get to that point and go, no, I'm going to do a couple more things. And they go, oh, no. And Tatum's MO is passing it to the other team, not recognizing a guy in the passing lane when he gets into trouble, and it's pick six. Jalen's MO is getting into trouble and having the ball stripped from him when he's in too deep, and then it's like a fumble recovery, and you're going the other way. Those have to stop, and those are the preventable ones that aren't the other team playing defense. The other team does play defense after the Celtics get to that point. Get to stop at here and do what they need to do, then the other team's defense isn't the factor.
Okay, that's fair. That's fair. I'll give you that one. Like I said, I think it's a combination of a number of things. You know, I like that game plan from the Warriors to just kind of let Tatum do his thing and limit some of the role players, which are the guys who killed him in game one, right? And you saw it. The three of the starters in that second game scored a combined 6 points. 2 points for Horford, 2 points for Smart, 2 points for Robert Williams, who played limited minutes compared to the other ones. So, and maybe this is for the next segment. How do the Celtics get those guys going? And what do they need to do, right?
Let's do that in the next segment. Because you got two things. That's our next two segments right there. That's how do you get those guys going? And is Jayson Tatum the later on, real or fake? Is Jayson Tatum a superstar? Because I will shout out Matt Moore, who I was listening to yesterday on Locked On NBA, who said it's almost as if, I apologize, I'm not going to get this exactly right, but it's almost as if both teams are better when the main guys aren't the guys. When the role players are the guys, that's when each team is at its best. So we'll save that when we come back. First, let's talk about Sakara. Now, you feel your best when you eat right. I know, I can tell you from being on the beat and traveling, when you eat poorly and you're running through airports and grabbing crap and putting that into your body, it drags you down. Sakara helps you live a healthy, balanced, life that you can truly enjoy with delicious, plant-rich, transformational nutrition that builds a foundation for living in your best body. Sakara is a wellness company anchored in food as medicine, on a mission to nourish your body through the power of plants. It gives you the tools to transform your life with organic, ready-to-eat meal delivery, and it's a program with functional wellness essentials. Basically, you get the power of the plants already made for you and delivered to you, so you don't have to do all of the prep work and all of that stuff. This is nutritionally designed, chef-crafted breakfast, lunch, and dinners made with powerful plant-rich ingredients that helps boost your energy, support your digestion, curbs your sugar cravings, gets your skin glowing. Plus, it's all delivered right to your door, ready to eat. Sakara's functional plant-rich wellness essentials help you create a body you love living in. From the best-selling Metabolism Super Powder to the Foundation, their daily supplement packs, Sakara's products are designed to support your wellness goals anytime, anywhere. Again, being on the road, I appreciate something like Sakara so much more. Right now, Sakara is offering listeners 20% off their first order when you go to sakara.com/lockedon20 or enter code LOCKEDON20 at checkout. That's Sakara, SAKARA.com/LOCKEDON20 to get 20% off your first order. Sakara.com/LOCKEDON. Thank you, everybody, for making Locked On Celtics Locked On NBA your first listener, and Locked On Celtics. What the hell? Why not? You're probably coming over for listening from my podcast anyway, right? So, Locked On NBA, whatever Locked On show it is, we have put together a survey that will help make all of our Locked On podcasts better. We want to learn more about listeners like you to make your favorite Locked On podcast the best that they can possibly be. This is your opportunity to tell us what you like and don't like about Locked On podcasts, like when John screws up the beginning of a read like this. Put it down in the survey. Go to lockedonpodcast.com/survey right now to get started. It won't take you very long, and everyone that completes the survey qualifies for a chance to win one of 10 $100 Ticketmaster gift cards. So to take the audience survey, go to lockedonpodcast.com/survey. We do appreciate your help. Jake Madison, help me stop talking.
I'm about to probably make you talk a whole lot more, because when looking at this game 3 here, clearly the Warriors' plan in game 2 was to eliminate those role players and play up on them. And they gave them no room on the perimeter on those guys and just clamp down on those guys to prevent catch and shoot, kick out situations after guys like Horford burden them from 3 in game 1, right? And they wanted to fix that and let kind of Tatum do his thing. And it worked. Smart had 2 points. Robert Williams, 2 points. Al Horford had 2 points. That's 3 of your 5 starters scoring a six total points, which is never going to win you any sort of game. So looking at this, an adjustment Boston needs to make with like capitalized, right, is get those guys going in some capacity. They have to, right? The Warriors had Klay Thompson on Al Horford, and it allowed, Draymond Green, who didn't do as much offensively in that game, which was good for the Warriors, to play on Jaylen Brown and to really limit him and have a disruptful defender kind of hit that point of attack. How do you fix that if you're the Celtics in game 3?
Well, I think the simple answer is ball movement and an extension of what I was talking about before, where instead of turning this into a one-on-one thing, because the Celtics are worse when they're one-on-one. And it goes back to what I was saying about Matt. He's 100% right in that assessment. The Celtics are better when the ball pops. When they had 30 assists the other night in game 1. When the ball pops, they're better. And I consider the Celtics, they really are like isolation basketball addicts. And whenever they have the opportunity to play ISO basketball, they really have a hard time passing that up. What they need to do is get back to, and they do this. They go back and forth, and this is why I do liken it, and not flippantly. I'm not trying to be flippant about addiction, but the Celtics will say it's like if we go on a bender, and you say after a Saturday night, like you're going crazy, get hammered. You wake up in the morning, you go, oh my God, never again. I'm never drinking again. And then a few days go by, you haven't had anything to drink, and you're like, nah, that's fine. Let's go on Friday night. Let's go out. And next thing you know, you're doing shots and everything. And then the next morning, you're like, oh, what did I do? I said I wasn't going to drink again, and I did it again. That's the Celtics. Every other game in this series. You say, why did I go so much ISO? Why am I doing this? Next day, pass. Get that ball moving. It's multiple attacks. Get the ball. Tatum, attack, collapse. Don't go too crazy. Get off the ball. Get it to the next guy. That guy comes and attacks. Tatum replaces. Now he goes. If the Warriors are trying to pack the paint, it's just contract and expand. Contract and expand. What happens when things contract and expand? You open up a hole in the middle of it. It's like a pothole. That's why potholes open up. Contract the defense, expand the defense. Keep doing that. Kick, attack again, kick again, attack again. By the second or third time, someone is going to make a mistake. One of those weak links, Steph Curry, Klay Thompson, Jordan Poole, one of those guys is going to go the wrong way. And then that's when that guy scores. So keep putting that pressure on the defense. And it's as simple as that. It's as simple as that. They will open up the drive and kick opportunities, and someone will be open, and it'll very often be one of those role players.
Yeah, so I think that's great in theory, right? But I think the Golden State Warriors kind of took some of that away in game 2 by, not really, by kind of like not defending Jayson Tatum, right? But kind of almost letting him do his thing. And this is going to key into something that I want to talk about in the next segment when we look at if he's a superstar or not, and kind of some of his postseason performances with that. If they're just going to let him kind of go and score, well, then I don't know if there's really an opportunity for that drive and kick game. And they seem content to kind of live with him scoring and not letting anyone else get involved, and almost banking on the fact that he wasn't going to go for, say, 50 points or something along those lines. And so before you even kind of get that Warriors defense to start to key in on him, he's going to need to make them pay kind of like early on. So I wonder if you almost have to try and get like Jayson Tatum going, like to an insanely hot degree early on in this one, to get the Warriors defense to kind of abandon their game plan and go, oh no, we're going to lose if he's doing this, because they seem cool with him kind of doing what he wanted in game 2, knowing it's not going to be enough.
I think that Tatum really has to do the opposite of that. To be honest with you, like he can't.
No, that's great.
Yeah, he can't go for his own early. Like he can't be looking for his own offense. He has to just understand if they are walling him off, then at the early parts of the game, you have to be willing to make them pay for it. Because if you just keep trying to go up against that wall and
But they weren't walling him off a ton, were they? Like, it seemed like they were content to let him kind of attack, knowing, okay, we have enough down low to kind of, again, if he goes for 50, yeah, that was a bad mistake and we're going to probably lose the game, but they seem kind of to bank on the fact that he wouldn't and would be able to kind of limit some of those role players with them staying really home on the perimeter that prevented those catch and shoot situations. They had a ton of those in game 1. They didn't have really many at all in game 2.
I'll save one of my pieces of Tatum analysis for the next segment, because he does need to attack with more force. But
okay, there we go.
But he does need to attack with more force for sure. It's something I've been asking them for. But at the same time, it's pick the right spot to do that. It's
okay.
You know what I mean? So
yeah,
it has to be, and I think both teams. Like, this is the game plan for both teams. I know I'm talking strictly from a Celtics perspective, but honestly, both of these teams are very, very similar in a lot of ways. They're not constructed the same way, but there are similarities in the way to get the superstars going in both instances is to find ways to open things up for the role players. And just
I agree with that. Yeah.
Yeah. Just like when Jordan Poole, like you got to get Jordan Poole going. You got to get him the confidence to get going. Just like you got to get Derek White and Marcus Smart and Al Horford that same confidence. The Warriors are going to do it in a little bit of a different way. Their offense is going to be constructed a little bit differently. But the Celtics, I think if they are insistent, and they have been, on Tatum initiating the offense, then they have to say what the whole point of Tatum initiating the offense is to draw two and get off the ball. That's because there's no other reason to have him be effectively your point guard. You have Marcus Smart, who is a good point guard and can run the plays. If we're going to look at ways to get Tatum off, then I say you get him off the ball and let Smart run the plays, and then you get him the ball on the move. And, you run your pin downs and the other stuff, and he can get the ball on the move and make his decisive moves. And that's how he gets going and heats up quickly. But to get the other guys going, if he's going to get the ball and draw two, then just lean into that, draw the two way out and dump it off to somebody else and let the Celtics play 4-on-3 for a second and a half, enough to open up that little bit of a sliver for somebody to make a play.
Yeah, so I think that's some of the keys to it, right? It's just finding ways to get those other role players in spots they like and open for shots to burn that Warriors defense, because they're going to I think they're going to kind of stick with the same game plan, and they're going to give Tatum some options to really go. And like, there's it's very realistic in this game that he's going to score 30 plus points. If he scores 50, they're certainly going to win, but I think he can get 30 and they still lose, which is basically what happened the other night. And I think it's about getting those other guys probably moving more, right? Like, it looked like the Celtics were waiting for catch and shoot opportunities to develop, and those never really did. So maybe you've got to get those guys moving off ball. And maybe it's like you said, letting Marcus Smart run the offense a little bit more, run some more set plays, things like that, to generate some open looks to your other guys, to kind of try and keep that defense a little bit more honest, and then open it up for Jayson Tatum to maybe kind of take you home and try and close that game out. And maybe there's a way to get Draymond Green off of Jaylen Brown so that he doesn't have 17 points on 17 shots in a very inefficient game. I think that's kind of the key, right? Like, you looked at this series, and at one point it was going to be about that Boston defense versus the Warriors offense. And we kind of called that one a little bit of a draw to a certain degree, right? When we previewed this last week. And then it was, okay, when I started looking at this and thinking more about the series, is Boston going to have enough offense? And game one, when those role players are hitting those threes and making shots and getting good looks, yeah, definitely. But when you have it in game 2, when they really limited those guys, right? Smart was 0 for 3 from 3. Al Horford didn't even take a 3-point attempt, which after game 1 is kind of wild to think about, that they couldn't even manufacture a good look for him from 3, right? With Klay Thompson guarding him for the most part in this one. They need to figure that stuff out, in my opinion, to generate more offense, because otherwise look at the Celtics with the turnover issues they have. And it's like, yeah, look, they're great defensively. They are, absolutely. And then you have Steph Curry who can do Steph Curry things, and as good as your defense is, like, who cares? And then where do your points come from to be able to go out and score and try and keep up with them when you're in that scenario? And that's where I kind of worry about Boston. But if they can get those other guys going, like, you've got to try and create some 3-point attempts for Al Horford in this one.
Yeah, you do. You do. I will finish up my point here with this in as far as adjustments and all the other stuff. If the Celtics, let's go to the other end just for a hot second.
Yeah.
If the Celtics can just rein things in and play their defense to just their normal defense, I think their defense has been fine. So I think if the Celtics,
I agree with that.
Just when we talk about limit the turnovers, play your defense, and just don't let your offense impact your defense. The Celtics freelanced just a few too many times. And I talked to Grant Williams today about it. He admits, like, there are a couple of plays where Grant kind of drifted off his guy because Steph Curry was coming and he tried to go make a play. And both of those times it cost the Celtics 3-pointers. Between the Celtics losing guys defensively and making, like, just generally the defense is okay, stay disciplined and make those plays. Limit the turnovers. You gave up 33 points off of turnovers in the last game. Cut that in half. Cut down some of those defensive mistakes. You're talking about a 20-point swing. You know, not only do you cut the turnover thing in half from like 30 to 15, that's not only 15 points that they don't score. You don't even know how many points you're adding on the other side by having an actual good possession. You might be scoring a couple of buckets there. So that could be, 30-point swing. So I still think the Celtics are going to win game 3. And you know who else thinks they're going to win game 3? BetOnline has them as 3.5-point favorites right now. Celtics minus 3.5. So I think I'm onto something, Jake. BetOnline is your number one source for all your betting, sports, stats, info. Find all the latest developments, news, and odds, including, obviously, the NBA Finals, the NHL Conference Finals. I think Colorado punched a ticket to the Stanley Cup Finals there. So you got MLB. You've got the latest fights, MMA, UFC, boxing, all of that stuff. BetOnline is your continued source for all your sports wagering information, live betting. So if you like that 3.5 points and the Celtics are up by, let's say, 10 at the half, you want to say, oh, well, let's see what the live odds for the second half. Maybe you can, maybe you like the Celtics to close out. Maybe you like the Warriors and their third quarter explosions to change things. You can bet on that live in-game betting. So head on over to the website today. Use your mobile device. You can learn more about the trends in action. BetOnline is where the game starts. We ask you to please gamble responsibly. All right, Jake, one of the storylines, because there's always like a weird, quirky storyline that comes out of these media days. I got to tell you, for people who don't understand, like the normal grind of a season, even through the conference finals, it's a very set pattern, a very set cadence to everything media-wise. Then the NBA Finals rolls around. Now, I've never covered the NBA Finals in depth in person like this, but there are, for each team, there are 2 interview rooms going at the same time and 2 podiums out on the floor. So you've got 3 players in one room, the coach and 2 players in the other room, 2 players at one podium, 2 players at the other. You got everybody basically on the team. And you've got the end of bench guys sitting there somewhere. If anybody wanted to talk to like Nick Stauskas, he's right there. You can go grab him if you want. It's wild to see the level, the multiple buses of media that pull up for these things. So everybody's asked. It's almost like a Super Bowl media day every practice. It's wild. So Jayson Tatum was asked about being a superstar. And he basically said, look, this didn't come from me. People want to debate. People, you commented to the commenter, said, I've seen there's a huge debate. Is he a superstar or not? I want to know where that came from. Did I tweet that? Did I ever say I'm a superstar? I'm on the verge. That never came from me. So let's start with this. We do real or fake every Wednesday on this podcast. So let me ask you, real or fake? Jayson Tatum is a superstar.
It's fake right now, but just barely right now. He needs another postseason of a deep run during the postseason to really get there. When you start to look at his resume, though, like he checks a lot of the boxes, right? 3-time All-Star. He's made the All-NBA teams twice, including this past year. He's checking a lot of those things. He's the best player on a team in the NBA Finals. That's going to get you really far. You probably just need one more run of it doing that to really like kind of cement his place in that superstar conversation. So I'm going to call it fake, but barely. But like you look at some of the postseason performances he's had, right? He's had a 51 point postseason game. Those type of things I think really matter in kind of building that legacy of like, you're a superstar, and it takes some of that postseason success. And then I even look at him in that like Bucks series where he had almost 3 games of 30 plus points. Like do that one more season in the postseason or one more year in the postseason, and I'm going to be fully bought in. Like he's like right, just so close.
He is close. I know maybe people would expect me to argue for it as real, but I think superstardom is reserved for the best of the best. LeBron, Giannis, and like the perennial MVP candidates. And Tatum, Tatum is taking a different path. He didn't come in like a Luka, who is of similar age, but is kind of seen as one of those. He can kind of manipulate the game, and he can do a lot of things on the floor, and he can go out there and he can just will his team to certain performances. Tatum has had monster performances in these playoffs and in the past, and has willed his team in certain circumstances, but like he hasn't got, first of all, this is the first time he's gotten to the finals. So, he's young, he's only 23. So like you said, multiple runs to the finals elevates his star for sure. But what I don't see from Tatum is what you see from a LeBron or a Durant or something, or I will say actually in these playoffs, more Giannis, where Giannis took that Bucks team without Chris Middleton and said, I'm going to do everything I can to not let us lose this series. And he like almost did it. He almost shorthanded, like averaged like 40 and 15. The Celtics' entire defense was geared towards stopping him, and they still, even though they made him have a more inefficient series, like his effective field goal percentage was way down, but because his usage was like at 50%, some ungodly number, he still went and averaged like the 40 and the 15. Tatum is still a little too easily taken out in certain games. I want to see him take that next. That's his next step. That to me is his next step, which isn't to say like I don't want to take away from what he is, which is a major star in the NBA and an extraordinarily popular player. He doesn't sell Gatorade and stuff like that because people don't like him. He's an amazing player and a deserving first team All NBA. But if you want to be called a superstar, like Tatum in a superstar mode, I think would say, all right, you know what? Tonight, game 3, hop on my back. I got this. Yeah. And this feeling of like inevitability of, Tatum is going to step up. And right now, I just don't think we're at that. He can. And in Boston, they're hopeful that he can step up. But I don't think everybody in Boston's like, oh yeah, this is a 40-piece coming, and let's see who he can pull along with him. You just don't know. So
I agree with that. I think you nailed it right there. Like that's it, right? Like, does he feel inevitable in the postseason in a key game? And that's not kind of what I get from him, right? Like he's, as you said, he's capable of doing it. He's done it in the past at times right? We've seen him with 50 points. We've seen him with 240-plus point games as well. But has it ever been where it's like, oh, cool, they got Jayson Tatum. He's just going to take over this game and he's going to at least get them real close to a victory, or they fall like just short. I feel comfortable with Giannis doing that, right? You're in the game and it's a must win and you're like, oh, they got Giannis. They're good. You even say that about Luka Doncic to a certain degree, as you mentioned his name, but you don't really kind of feel that way about Jayson Tatum just yet. And now that he's having some postseason success, and look, I think in this game, he's going to need to score like 50 plus for them to really have a realistic chance of winning the Celtics with the way that defense played. Now, if he goes and does that, that's one of those things where you're like, oh, wait, look at what he just did. And it gets him further along in that conversation. And maybe they still lose this series, but then he kind of has that signature moment of, as you said, put the team on his back and he goes, don't worry, we're going to get there. You guys just got to do a little bit and I'll take care of 90% of everything here. And then next year, he has a couple games like that in the postseason, right? Or, and maybe for him, hopefully he doesn't need to do that and the Celtics are better and you have your supporting cast stepping up. But when those guys don't, he's got to be the one to be like, all right, I'm going to do it, right? It's like the supervillain that's tired of sending henchmen in that keep dying to the heroes. He's like, I'm just going to do it myself. And he needs to kind of take that mindset and do it. And you just don't see that enough from him just yet, but he certainly is capable of it.
I think he's an off season or two away from this, and again, only 23. So he's, is he only 23?
The other thing is like the defense, 24, right? Like that gets kind of lost 24. In this.
His defense is really good. Yeah. He's a two-way player. He's 24. I want to make sure that he just turned 24. So he's still a few years away from his actual prime. And look, not everybody comes in as a LeBron. Not everybody comes in and just dominates right away. Tatum's growing his game a little more slowly up to that superstardom. You don't typically see it happen this way, but as he grows into that body, that big frame of his, he's just adding these little elements. I really think that he's a summer or two of some ball handling work and some just tweaks mentally about his approach offensively to the game. And what you don't see all the time is like Giannis doesn't just walk in and just like, I'm dominating every second I'm on the floor. There are times where it's like, you got to understand when to set up these guys. And this was his first year as truly being challenged by Ime Udoka to become a playmaker and to average, he's averaging 7 and 8 assists, something like he's getting those big assists. He had 13 the other night. Put it all together. Like, I think if he puts it all together in the next year or two, maybe next year or the year after, we can start seeing him in some real meaningful MVP conversations, especially as the Celtics now ascend to this finals kind of contender. Whatever moves they make, whatever progress he makes, whatever coaching he gets from Ime Udoka can get him to that level.
Yeah, I agree with that. No, like totally. I think he's close. Like, I think he's really close. He's like one of the guys that you look at and it's like, that's kind of the next one up to a certain degree. And with this team being good, potentially having another deep postseason run in the future, like those are the things he kind of needs. Look, do it tonight. Start it tonight. This is like the game to do it, given the Warriors defense and kind of what they did in game 2. This is the first step. If he does this here, that's going to get a lot of people kind of paying a little bit more attention to him on that. And really is kind of the big first step that he needs to take to kind of get into that conversation.
Let's see what he does tonight. Celtics Warriors game 3. So check it out. Check out the post-game reaction on the Locked On Celtics podcast. Locked On Warriors too. Got to give Cyrus a shout out. Does a great job there. Make sure you get both sides. Jake, maybe one of these days, maybe soon, the Locked On NBA podcast with us can be a crossover Celtics Pelicans preview. That'd be fun.
Would be fun. NBA Finals in New Orleans would be a pretty good time.
Talk about benders. We'll both be sitting here like, oh my God, why did we do this to ourselves? I can't even talk about this game.
Yeah, as we record at like 6 p.m. and we're still struggling.
We might as well, at that point, we'll be like walking out of wherever, like at 10 a.m. Like,
we're live at a bar, basically.
Let's just do it now. Yeah, we'll be on Bourbon Street or something like that, walking back. All right. Until then, we'll just focus on these finals. Thanks for listening to the Locked On NBA podcast. On Wednesdays, I'm one of your hosts, John Karalis, host of the Locked On Celtics podcast, as you might have heard, at John_Karalis on Twitter.
And I'm Jake Madison, host of the Locked On Pelicans podcast, at NOLA Jake on Twitter.
And hey, how about the Locked On NBA Big Board podcast? Check that out. The draft is coming up very, very quickly. Locked On NBA Big Board, Rafael Barlow is awesome at his job. Make sure you're subscribed to that. Subscribe to the show. Share the podcast with your friends, family, random people on the street. Tell them they should be listening to and watching Locked On NBA right here on the Locked On Podcast Network.